want to welcome you guys back to another episode of The Jar, a sports podcast that brings you facts and opinions, and you guys decide if you like it, hate it, or want to steal it. NBA Playoff Edition. I know you guys enjoyed these series. I know you did. I did. We all did. But there were some series that was a little iffy. There were some series that showed that some teams needed work, and there were some series that showed that no matter how good your offense is, defense still can possibly win championships. We'll see. I'll kick things off right away. I hate to say this, but I'll get my guys out the way. That's the OKC Thunder. A great team. They tried their best. They struggled through some things that were obvious out there on the floor, which were the defense, and not the defense on the perimeter players, because I think they played good. And I'm sorry, I apologize. You guys all know this, but I'll say it. They played the Dallas Mavericks. No one surprised, and the Dallas Mavericks pretty much were successful because they did a fairly good job on Luka and Kyrie for the most part, but it came down to rebounding and defending the big men. Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively ate on the OKC Thunder. We love Chet Holmgren. Chet Holmgren, it looks like the fork off a Toy Story. He's just too small. I mean, it is what it is, and it showed through the series. At times, they looked great because they were playing fast-paced. Chet was hitting his shots. Jalen Williams was hitting his shots. He's another one that has to get better. Now, they're young. I don't like using that reason because players play. So when I say they're young, they have time, not because they're inexperienced. Because if they were inexperienced, they wouldn't have took Dallas Mavericks to 6 games. They were good enough. They just needed certain pieces to help them along the way. It was pretty much Shai Gilgeous-Alexander through the whole series. I mean, he pretty much was trying to carry his team, almost like putting a mansion on his back. He could only carry it for so long. Jalen Williams has some games. Chet Holmgren has some games, but it just came down to the players on the Dallas Mavericks between Kyrie Irving, trying to stop him, trying to stop Luka Doncic. Yeah, PJ Washington, who was a great acquisition from the Charlotte Hornets. Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards. Tim Hardaway came back. They pretty much had everything you need. And unfortunately, OKC didn't. They had some great players. They were great seasonal players. But when you can actually focus on one team for a series, that showed definitely. Now, if you want to say pick them in one game in a season, yeah, probably pick OKC. But a series where you have to pretty much button down and have them on film and only focus on their team, it's going to be hard for them to be somebody like Dallas, especially with the lack of talent that they had. A lot of young talent, but they weren't as talented as Dallas. Dallas may be one of the most talented teams in the NBA in every position. They have a good power forward, a good center, a good point guard, a good shooting guard, a good wing. They have everything. And OKC is left scratching their head because it was proven, honestly, that Shai Gilgeous was probably the best player in the series. In my opinion, he had a great game every game between rebounding the ball at a high level, trying to pass at a high level, and, of course, elite scoring and efficiency at a high level. But it just wasn't successful, and unfortunately, they lost in 6 games. But a lot of people say, well, they have next year, and it's something to build off of. But sometimes you worry about the windows because this was a year where it was kind of weird with the NBA. A lot of weird injuries, a lot of things happening that people didn't expect, namely OKC being number 1, namely the Minnesota Timberwolves being 2 or 3, pretty much number 1 all year, fighting with OKC in Denver. And, you had Golden State suck, LA Lakers suck, Phoenix Suns that we thought was going to be good, they sucked. So it was a weird year, and I hope that they're able to build off this because the acquisition of Gordon Hayward, he did absolutely nothing. I think they said he had 0 points in 48 minutes. And then he blamed the team, saying he wasn't put in a position to be successful. Maybe so, but the old Gordon would have found a way. Ever since he's broken his fibula, he just hasn't been the same. He hasn't looked the same. So maybe he'll succeed somewhere else, but he didn't help. Josh Giddey was unplayable, so I think that also put them in a bind where they were trying to shuffle their starting lineup. It just didn't work out, but congratulations to the Dallas Mavericks. They did what they had to do, and now they're in the Western Conference Finals. All right, let's fast forward all the way to the real games. The New York Knicks versus the Indiana Pacers. Great series. Amazing series. Some up and down players. A lot of injuries. And I think that just came down to the healthiest team. There was a lot of times that Tyrese Halliburton looked passive. They said his back was still hurting. Maybe so. But it was just weird sometimes. Some games he looked really aggressive. And then some games he looked a little, I don't know, just like he wasn't into it. Who knows? I couldn't really figure it out. I'm a fan of Tyrese because when he's playing good, he talks crazy. He makes the game fun to watch. But when he's not playing good, it's like it's an eyesore. That's the difference. He doesn't have an in-between. I think it's like when he's up, he's up. When he's down, he's down. And that was the situation with him. So I would say that the New York Knicks, in my opinion, should have won that series. But the reason they didn't win that series is probably because they weren't healthy. Julius Randle went out. Bogdanovich went out. I mean, and these weren't injuries where they were gone for 2 or 3 days, weeks. They were gone for the season. Bogdanovich went out in the playoffs. He was a great acquisition off the bench for them. Maybe he probably could have went to the starting lineup. They just didn't have the right pieces, and it really hurt them in the end, and it's unfortunate because they really had an opportunity. That's pretty much how it really laid out the whole time. So the Pacers did what they had to do, and the New York Knicks did what they tried to do, and that's make it a good fight. And the Pacers just were more healthy, and the Knicks were more injured. I mean, Jalen Brunson even went out and broke his hand. I mean, it was like a black cat just sitting over the whole series. And Mitchell Robinson got hurt because Joel Embiid grabbed him while he was on the ground, which if there had been Draymond Green, he might have been out for 2 or 3 games. That's a whole nother story, which is horrible. Josh Hart being hurt with some type of rib contusion. OG Anunoby getting hurt. It just was injury after injury after injury, and it was really, really hard to watch. So, congratulations to the Indiana Pacers. I picked them, especially because New York wasn't healthy, but it was great to see the New York Knicks in the playoffs. It was exciting, an exciting series. It definitely was worth watching. I just wish they could have been at their full capability, and it would have been a great series to see them go against the Boston Celtics, in my opinion. And they may have even pushed them or beat them because Boston, I'll get to them.
Real quick, you guys, I want to thank you guys for continuing to watch The Jar. If you do love the content that I'm putting out, please hit that subscribe button. Smash that subscribe button. Tell your friends, your family, anybody that you can think of that loves to hear about sports, especially the sports going on now, whether it's NBA, NFL, who knows what topics we'll get into. It depends on the biggest things happening right then and now. I'll provide you guys the best opinionated information, the best factual information that I can think of, because again, we're viewers, we all have our opinions, and that's what I'm here for. Thank you guys again.
Game that we all loved, watched, and wanted to see was the Minnesota Timberwolves against the Denver Nuggets in that Game 7. Amazing. Great comeback. Great offense. Amazing defense. That's pretty much what you saw this whole series. You talk about a slugfest. Who says the new talent can't get viewers in the seats? From what I understand, the viewership was almost as much as the Super Bowl. When has the NBA seen that last? Get it together, NBA. Keep that new talent going. I see good things ahead. Stop worrying about those guys like I've been saying, and things like this can happen. Because we were all glued to that. I mean, Ant-Man is who he is, the Joker is who he is, and the team around them is who they were. And it was amazing to see the whole series front to back. Amazing. I picked the Minnesota Timberwolves. Why? Because I said it was a bad matchup for Denver, and they almost proved me wrong. Now, I'll say this. There were some weird things going on. There were some things... it was just a little strange. I'll say that. It looks like, and I get it. I don't think anyone expected the Timberwolves to come out slapping the Denver Nuggets in the face as they did. And I think that caught the world for a loop. And people can say what they want to. There was a lot of things that the Timberwolves weren't allowed to do after the first two games. Like play really, really good defense. And it made it a little hard. They lost 3 straight. And, sometimes you find that ironic, right? People can say heart of the champion, blah, 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 but Denver won 1 championship. They didn't win 2 championships or anything like that. But it just seemed weird that they were winning the first 2 games. They blew them out the second game. Then all of a sudden they couldn't win the 3 games straight. I'm not going to get there today. Maybe one of these days I'll make one of those conspiracy theories that people love to hate and hate to love. But it just was a little weird. I'll say this. It was certain people, Jaden McDaniels, that they know was probably the best perimeter defender, him and Herb Jones, in the league. And him being in foul trouble fast played a part because he's a very, very, very important piece to the Minnesota Timberwolves way of playing. He can pretty much defend every position from point guard to power forward, depending on who the power forward is, of course. So it's just a little weird. But regardless of the fact, the Denver Nuggets did what they did. They showed up. They won some games. They proved that they're who they are. And I think in the end, when we were watching Game 7, we all figured, even me, because I picked Minnesota up, they laid down. I don't do that. They're not ready, because if they weren't ready, they wouldn't have blew the Denver Nuggets out the game before, and they wouldn't have blew them out Game 2. I don't like they're not ready. It's just the Denver Nuggets looked like they came out ready to win. They were clicking on all cylinders. They had a good game plan, trying to stop Anthony Edwards and basically saying everybody else beat us. And at first it was working. Things changed in the second half. Anthony Edwards started getting confidence. His teammates were hitting shots. And I'll tell you a key piece. And I think Denver kind of overlooked it, and I get it. Because they were double teaming Anthony Edwards, they allowed Jaden McDaniels to get his confidence. And if you've been watching the Minnesota Timberwolves, if Jaden McDaniels is going to score between 18 and 25, 30 points along with his defense, because Ant-Man's going to get his, Karl-Anthony Towns going to get theirs, that's pretty much a 3-headed monster. They're going to be hard to beat. And that's what ended up happening. Trying to stop Anthony Edwards allowed Jaden McDaniels to eat in the first half, gain his confidence in the first half, which also allowed Naz Reid from the double team to gain his confidence on defense and offense. So they showed that it's just not Ant-Man, which is a great thing. And that's what I was explaining when I was saying the matchup is bad, because not just only on the defensive end, which they had 3 centers and made Jokic work. And Jokic was who he was. He was MVP, scoring on all cylinders everywhere, inside, outside, made Rudy look bad one of the games to the point where he should have been on the bench. He was who he is. But I'll tell you one thing I noticed that the Timberwolves didn't allow. They didn't allow Jokic to be the facilitator. That played a part in the end. Now, they still won games because he's a dominant player in himself, but with them pretty much locking up Jamal Murray, with the exception of that 7-game explosion, and not allowing Jokic to be that facilitating center who likes to maybe average somewhere around 25 points, 10, 11 assists, 12 or 13 rebounds. I think that hurt them because you didn't have the other players scoring. Michael Porter Jr. struggled. Aaron Gordon had 1 game. The bench is terrible. They needed Bruce Brown. I've been saying that since they let him slip out of their hands. I mean, money's money. You can afford them. I get it, but you got to get somebody. Jeff Green, he would play good defense and hit very opportunistic shots that the Christian Bronze and the PJ Washington, who was unplayable, wouldn't have hit. It was just a bad matchup. And you think between the starting 5 of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then you bring in Nickeil Alexander, and then you bring in Naz Reid. Those 2 alone is better than anybody on the Denver's bench. So, again, I think the starters did as good as they can, but it was more so just too much on Jokic back. I talked about Shea Gilgeous having a situation where he had to put the team on his back. It was kind of the same exact thing with Jokic. Jamal Murray had a game or two, but for the most part, it wasn't really anything we would say was helpful. Jokic it was just too much. You're literally going against Rudy, and he destroyed Rudy one game, but then you had Naz Reid, who was playing great defense. You had Karl-Anthony Towns, who was playing great defense. So anything Jokic could do, they had a player for. Regardless of how great he was, he had to earn it. So when he was on the outside, they had a perimeter center in Karl-Anthony Towns and Naz Reid. When he was on the inside, they had Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid. And Naz played him really good. Rudy, he destroyed Rudy, but you have to understand, in the game of basketball, he's still earning those points. He's still making those shots. It's not easy, except for the game where he was just unstoppable. But I would say that kind of that messed up everything for them. And because of that, they were in a bind, and they were scrambling to figure out how can anybody else on the team help us. And that's what it came down to. Minnesota was down 20 in the first half, and they played Timberwolves defense. Anthony Edwards got confidence, and pretty much everything meshed. They were tired. Jokic looked fatigued. Jamal Murray had a great game, but again, you got to remember, he was on fire in the first half. He ended up with 35, but he's working for every point because he's not getting any help. And then you have Jokic working for every point because they're not getting any help. The no-shows of the starters. That's probably the best 5 starters in the NBA as far as meshing goes. Not talent, as far as a mesh group. But the Timberwolves might be right there with them. If you want to say offense and defense, then it would be Denver. But if you want to say strictly defense, you probably would say the Timberwolves. And their defensive side 5 was better than the Denver Nuggets offensive side 5. That's just pretty much what it turned out to be. And then you sprinkle in the bench. So coming back from a 22-point lead, you kind of saw the Denver Nuggets kind of getting nervous and wondering, like, man, how do we beat these guys? We're up 22. Anthony Edwards is not playing good, and all of a sudden we turn around and the game is tied. Or actually, they were up 1 when Anthony Edwards hit the 3 to go into the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And I know that was probably a shock to them because I think they really thought that if we pour it on enough, they'll just go away. And they didn't. So that's why I don't like saying Heart of a Champion, because if you want to say Heart of Champions fight from 20 down. Minnesota hasn't won anything. So it was just the will to win. It was the will to defend. And it was the will to just never think that we're out of a game. And that goes a long way when you have a player like Anthony Edwards, who's, if you want to say he's young and naive and always feels like he's not out of it, then maybe you can say that. But the other stuff, I don't agree with so much. So the Minnesota Timberwolves end up coming back from 20 down and winning that game and going to the Western Conference Finals. Very, very exciting series. I loved it. I know you guys loved it. Now, the question is going to be the matchups. The matchups are going to be good. The reason being is because now, and the Timberwolves have the record of the season series between them and Dallas, but Daniel Gafford wasn't there. They didn't have PJ Washington, so you really can throw that out the window. And again, that's the season. Again, OKC had a great season against teams, and I think they had a better record against Dallas until Dallas got all those additions. So now for these series matchups, and we're going to have the Dallas Mavericks, which again, if you want to take away the season, because again, seasons don't necessarily matter. Reason being is because they didn't have their acquisitions, because the Timberwolves won that series in the season 3-1. But again, Daniel Gafford wasn't there. PJ Washington wasn't there, and those are major additions. So it isn't like you're saying, they're nobody. They didn't make a difference. They made a major difference. It's the reason why they didn't go 7 against OKC, and honestly could have won in 5. So this is going to be a good series. Why? Because again, I do believe Minnesota is the favorite, rightfully so, and the matchup is better for them again because, and I'll just kind of elaborate on the reasoning. Unlike Jokic, they don't have a center who could dominate inside and out, who passes the ball, who rebounds, who pretty much is the smartest guy on the floor. They have just guys who rebound and dunk. I think that favors Rudy because now Rudy doesn't have to fight with the best player in the world on a talent level. So he's going to be able to do what he does best, and that's rebound and dunk as well. But at an elite level, because I think, and it's funny we're saying this, who's better, right? Because Rudy is, oh my God. But I think Rudy at his position is better than Lively. And I don't know if he's as good as Gafford, but I think he is better for the Wolves at his position than maybe Gafford for Dallas. I don't know. It's hard to really even go. I won't even go down. Just scratch that. I'll say this. I think Rudy is going to have an easier time going against Lively and Gafford because he's just going to have to rebound and block shots and dunk versus going against Nikola Jokic. I'll just say that. And then you have Ant-Man. He's going to take the challenge of defending Kyrie from what I'm understanding. Jaden McDaniels is going to attack Luka. Oh, man, it's Mike Conley, of course. He'll probably be the odd man out. Now, here's the thing. P.J. Washington is going to be a big deal. You have to be careful with him. He's going to be a big deal. So I want to see how Minnesota's going to do this, because if you put those two defenders on their best offensive players, then who are you going to put Mike Conley on? Or, I mean, you might can switch. And Conley at times is going to play Kyrie. I get it. I mean, it's going to be a good series. At least I hope it's going to be a good series on both ends. But I do think this favors the Timberwolves because Kyrie has been playing exceptional defense. He can't guard Ant-Man. Luka has been playing Luka defense. He can't guard Ant-Man. I don't think they can guard Jaden McDaniels. He's a legit 6'9", 6'10" wing defender. And then you add Karl Anthony Towns. Now, he'll probably be on P.J. Washington. So that'll be the matchup you look out for. Now, PJ has been playing exceptionally well against OKC, and he's a good player. I don't think he is as good as Karl Anthony Towns. No, he's not. But, Karl Anthony Towns sometimes tends to play down to his level of competition. He did that for a while in this last series when he had littler guys on him. And when he decided to post up and score, it was easy the way he showed in Game 7. So how is Karl Anthony Towns going to play? It's going to be a key role. And then, of course, you add the bench. Dallas has a lot of good players on the bench. I don't think they're as good as Minnesota's bench, but they have a lot of players that can equal up to Minnesota's bench because Nickeil Alexander can really knock down the shots, and he plays defense as well. And then, of course, you have the 6 Man of the Year, Naz Reid, which is a 7-foot monster when he wants to be. And I think it's going to be just tough because you're going to have Lively coming off the bench. And with Lively coming off the bench, he'll probably be, switching up between guard and maybe Karl Anthony Towns at times, Naz Reid at times, and, of course, Rudy at times, then Gafford the same way. The key is going to be those wing guys. How is Luka going to defend? Because he'll probably be on Conley, but Conley's been shown to knock down shots. He'll probably guard Jaden McDaniels at times because he's more so on the defensive end. But the fear is to let him get going like he did against Denver in that 7th game, and it could get away from him very fast. But that doesn't mean that Dallas can't do their thing. I don't like to be just one-sided here, even though I picked the Timberwolves. Luka and Kyrie can score on anybody at any given time. So you're pretty much looking at an unstoppable defense going against an immovable force of offense, which is the Dallas Mavericks, because those two may be the best scoring tandem in the league because they can score any way, however you want it, however you need it. No pun intended. So it's going to be fun to see. And again, I do hope it goes 7 games, just because the NBA the NBA viewers like myself, we need it. And because the Minnesota and Denver series was so great, we don't want to down it, right? You don't want to look at it and say, dang, this is the best series. And it happens. But I think in order to keep the NBA, to keep the momentum going with the NBA, we need another 7-game series with the Western Conference Finals for sure. Now let me swing over to the East. Boston Celtics. I don't know who's going to show up. Now, they play the Pacers. So, I got Boston winning, but I'll say this. It's going to be pace versus space. So you're going to be looking at a situation where the Dallas Mavericks are going to be, I'm sorry, I said the Dallas Mavericks. I'm sorry. You're going to be looking at a situation where the Indiana Pacers is going to be going fast, 1,000 miles an hour, versus a team that likes to spread out and play one-on-one. So, again, pace against space. Who's going to prevail? More than likely the space, because the talent on the Boston team is better than the talent on the Pacers team. But at the same time, we have the Dallas. Why do I keep saying Dallas? We have the Boston Celtics, who they, for some reason, they don't play up to their potential. Like, the spacing is always good, but the spacing means they need to play one-on-one all the freaking time. I mean, they lost 2 games in the last series. They lost to Miami, which they shouldn't have lost a game to. And then they lost to Cleveland, which in my opinion, Cleveland's good, but they shouldn't have lost a game to. But it's like they play down on their talent. They play down on who their teams. I don't know what's going on with Boston. Even Drew at times looks bad out there because he's taking a gang of threes, stuff he didn't do. And again, it's different offense stuff he didn't do in Milwaukee, but you would think he would settle them down. And they're still great, don't get me wrong. But because how stupid they are or acting, and I don't mean to call anybody stupid, I'm just saying as a team, when I see them out there, it just looks like they're dumb. Like, why are you taking all these stupid shots? For what? Why is there no ball movement? Why is it just Jaylen Brown isolation, Jason Tatum isolation? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, sometimes it looks like Al Horford is the only one out there with some sense, and that's with Drew Holiday and Derek White. I mean, it's just weird. So, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be. I think it'll go 6, maybe. I don't know. I just know that I hope that we get a good series because we deserve it. And Boston has had a cakewalk for the most part, and they made things challenging when it shouldn't have been. So, yeah, I can't wait. Like, you guys can't wait. So, again, I want to welcome you guys back and viewing The Jar. This was a really, really good NBA playoffs, guys, even with the injuries. Maybe next year will be better, but we're not going to worry about that. Enjoy it while it's here. Can't wait to talk to you guys next time. Coming soon, and see you soon.